Divine self-love empowered by his word. This Bible study was inspired by verses in Matthew 22, verses 37 to 40. It reads, Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord your God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. These verses imply that we also must love ourselves, and that there is a parallel between loving God, loving yourself, and loving your neighbor. Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. Many there be which say of my soul, There is no hope for him in God. But thou, O Lord, art a shield for me, my glory and the lifter up of mine head. I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill. I laid me down and slept. I awaked, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people that have set themselves against me round about. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God. For thou hast smitten all mine enemies upon thy cheekbone. Thou hast broken the teeth of the ungodly. Salvation belongeth unto the Lord. Thy blessing is upon thy people. Amen. Okay, so to go back to the top of the first section where it says, Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? Many are they that rise up against me. Many there be which say of my soul, there is no help for him in God. This psalm is written by David, and David has many enemies who conspire against him and believe in his demise. In the second half, it says, But thou, O Lord, art a shield for me, my glory and the lifter up of mine head. I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill. So God is his shield. He trusts in the Lord and in his plans. He believes that the Lord will save him. That's what that means. Go all the way down towards the end, towards verses 7 and 8, and it says, Arise, O Lord, and save me, O my God. For thou hast smitten all my enemies upon thy cheekbone, upon the cheekbone. Thou hast broken the teeth of the ungodly. Salvation belongeth unto the Lord. Thy blessing is upon thy people. So David take refuge in the Lord and God delivers him. And so to the background of this story, it's kind of a little messy. So what happens here? David is talking about fleeing from his son. His son name is Absalom, and his son was trying to take the throne from him. So David in this psalm was in a situation when he was fleeing from his son who was rising up against him to take over as a king of the Israelites. His son Absalom had tension with King David because he felt that King David didn't do enough to avenge his sister Tamar. And so now with Tamar, she was one of King David's daughters in this story in the Bible. And what happened with her was another brother, unfortunately, her. And so Absalom, he was so mad that the brother did that to her. And he felt in his heart that King David didn't do enough to avenge his sister. He felt that King David was like being too lax about the situation. And so he wanted to take matters into his own hands. And so he killed his brother. He killed his brother, and then he kind of like went away for a little while till like tensions died down, whatever the case may be. So him and his father had tension because of that, because he was low key like, you gonna just let this rock? Like how are we supposed to handle the situation? He violated my sister. And so back then in them times, like if something like that happened, the woman was shunned. Like it was like she was no like she probably was like no longer able to be in society. Like you had to be married or you would be like an outcast or something like that. Even like when people became widows, if you didn't have like a son to take care of you and stuff like that, you were gonna be an outcast. So that thing happened to her, and Absalom was so mad he killed his brother, and so him and his father had tension because David didn't like handle the situation like Absalom wanted to do, because clearly Absalom wanted to kill him. So he killed him, and then Absalom fled, and he stayed away for a little while in another kingdom. After time went past, he came back, and he was getting He was kinda, like, building rapport with the people of the kingdom and, just hanging out, like, close to the gates with the people, and they say that Absalom was handsome, so he was just using his charm, charming the people and getting people to back him, especially since some of the people who didn't wanna be under King David's rulership because, they liked the previous king. And so he was using all of that morale to kind of like build a crowd to go against his father so that he can take the throne. And David fled. Um, he didn't like the way King David ran things, so when he got the opportunity, he drew close to the people in the kingdom and convinced them that he would be a better leader and built an army to come against his father, King David. King David fled and put his trust in God for his deliverance. And so King David fled from the situation. He didn't fight his son back. He did have an army with him though. Um, he was a king, so he had an army. He was ready for war, but he didn't, go up against him, his son Absalom. He left. He just left as Absalom was coming after him. And so David is here. He's praying to God, saying that God, you will deliver me. They're saying that, there's no hope for me, but I know that you will help me, God. And David is believing in the words that God told him. God said, "You will be the king of the Israelites." So he is the king. Nothing can change the fact that David is the king of the Israelites, no matter who comes up against him. David had a lot of trials and tribulation. A lot of people was coming after him. A lot of people was trying to kill him and take his spot. But what was for him was for him. And so he trusted God. And so this Psalms led me to today's lesson, which is turning the other cheek. And I got the topic turning the other cheek because, like I told you, David, instead of setting up shop and going towards the fight, he fled and he trusted God to do his thing. He trusted God to deliver him. So today we're going to be talking about turning the other cheek. And so turning the other cheek, what is turning the other cheek? What does God say about turning the other cheek? And how does turning the other cheek demonstrate self-love? In Matthew 5, verses 38 to 39, it says, "You have heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also." It suggests not responding to evil or wrongdoing with equivalent aggression, vengeance, or hostility. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard is it for you to turn the other cheek? You can write it in the chat box. What does God say about turning the other cheek? He says, "Do not repay evil for evil. Do not retaliate with insults when people insult you. Instead, pay them back with a blessing." This is what God has called you to do, and He will grant you His blessing. God is telling you when people be nasty to you, you got to be nice to them. That's in First Peter 3, verse 9. I don't know how y'all feel about that, but y'all need to pray on that. God says, "Do not retaliate with insults." In Romans 12, verse 21, it says, "Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good." That's your job here, to overcome evil with good. You are supposed to be the light in the world that is filled with darkness. Romans 12:17 says, recompense to no man evil for evil, provide things honest in the sight of all men. You want to be honest, you want to be blameless, you want to live in truth. You don't want to do evil things, you don't want to conspire evil things in your heart because it's just a bitter feeling and it's just like a taint on you. We are made to be the image of God and to only you reflect his light. When people come to us with that negative energy, we can just look at it as a faith test and say, where God is saying, let's see how she's going to respond to this. Let's see how much she's changed. Let's see how you are going to be able to store up some treasures in heaven. And we got to be mindful of how we respond to these certain situations and pray for these people, so you can turn these situations around so people can be like, I wonder what's going on with such and such because nothing phases them or they wouldn't even have nothing to do with you. Like, why is this person so nice? It has to be something about this person. said in previous lessons that when people see the success of somebody, when people see how well people are doing, when people see the peace of somebody, people are going to want some of that. And then that's your way to introduce them to Jesus Christ. God needs you to be doing your big one, having self-control. That's one of the fruits of the spirit is self-control. And so if you can control yourself, God will bless you. He needs you to do what you got to do by not repaying evil for evil. Do not reflect the nature of your enemy. Reflect the nature of God. There's only two ways, it's either you in the light or you in the dark. There's no in between. Okay. And so we got to be mindful of what somebody is trying to get from us, or what we're even learning from the situation that is causing us anger in the first place. Like we learned in a lesson about our feelings, what is this trying to tell me in this situation? Or even if we're in something dire like King David, when people were after him, you got to say to yourself, do I believe of the word of God? Am I praying to God and asking him to be my refuge and strength? And do I believe that he is going to do what he says? What does God say about turning the other cheek? Dear friends, this is Romans 12, verse 19. Dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God. For the scriptures say, I will take revenge, I will pay them back, says the Lord. Now, these are the promises of God that will happen when you leave it up to him. He says that he will take revenge. So when people bother you, um when people are attacking you, when things aren't going your way because other people are causing you strife, God says, I will take revenge. I will pay them back. This is the promise that God has for you, that he will fight your battles for you. You don't have to fight your battles. This verse reflects Jesus' principle of trusting God's justice rather than seeking personal vengeance. This verse highlights the theme that God is faithful to fight for his people and bring justice in his time, urging believers to trust in his sovereign plan. So think about it, y'all. Y'all be wanting that soft life, this, and that. This is the real soft life. Okay, this is the real. So you don't respond. You only respond to positivity. You only respond to goodness. You only respond to the goodness of the Lord. You only give goodness. You only give what you get in. How people know that you know God is because all of the goodness that you get in. You are God's precious daughter. You are royalty, or you're God's son. You are royalty. And what about royalty? Who in the royalty in the royal kingdom is getting off their high horse and going to fight the battles? Okay. So this is exactly why God says, I will take revenge, because at the end of the day, right? If we're put here for a purpose and we're put here for God's purpose and God's will, and he has something that he wants us to do, right? And we come from this royal family, royal priesthood, and we're here and somebody is in our way doing something to prevent us from doing the will of God. God has to take care of it because it's his will that we need to do. If you have to sell ice cream and somebody is not letting you get whatever permit to sell ice cream, they will be dealt with. And that's just that, because if you're walking in your purpose and if you align with God, he will take revenge for anybody who's in your way. So any dream you have in your heart, any goal that you have in your heart, if it's aligned with the will of God and you pray that it's aligned with the will of God, you pray that you do his will and that his will for you comes into your life, it has to happen. Okay? That's how you trust in the Lord. And these are his promises that he made to us. He says, I will take revenge. Vengeance belongs to the Lord. Okay. Luke 18, verses 7 to 8 says, and will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice, and quickly. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? Jesus assures that God will bring justice for his people, even if it seems delayed. We have to remember that God's timing is not our timing, and he works everything for the good of those who love the Lord. He works everything in his good time. And if he needs something to happen in a certain way, he's not going to cause somebody a demise just because, they hurt you yesterday. He probably needs time. He needs to set up things how he set up. He works the whole wide world. What you know about working the whole wide world? And so we got to be patient with with justice and wanting justice. Justice will come. Now, did Jesus practice what he preached? Anybody want to share before I go? So, Jesus' whole life can be looked at as an example of turning the other cheek. The Pharisees and Sadducees constantly came to Jesus to tempt him and to find something to accuse him of, leading all the way up into his death. And it's a verse in Mark 14 that I'll read because I like this verse. And so it said, well, these verses, it says, and Jesus answered and said unto them, are ye come out as against a thief with swords and with staffs to take me? I was daily with you in the temple teaching, and ye took me not. But the scriptures must be fulfilled. So what Jesus is saying here, in my own destiny words, he like, y'all was with me yesterday and y'all ain't had these problems. Y'all was with me the day before that. Y'all was with me every day in the temple. Y'all was praying for me, praying with me. Y'all was getting all this advice, but all of a sudden today, here y'all come with knives, talking about I'm a thief. Y'all coming after me like I'm a thief. Yeah, but my father's will must be done anyway. That's what Jesus said. That's what God said. So it was just like the way Jesus clapped back to me is so like I love it because it's just so strong and it's just like so truthful. And it would for us to be truthful, we all should be truthful like Jesus, but the way he was truthful, it like hurt to the point where people couldn't take him. So Jesus definitely practiced what he preached. And we can also see God turning the other cheek when people continue to sin and they say they're going to do something for him and continuously let him down. So like us being here to do his will, and sometimes when we fall astray or or just do something that's that's leading us in a different path, God is always there with the his open hands and his grace willing to take us back in. And so he turns his cheek on what you've done time and time, just like the Israelites when God led them out of slavery. Not long after, they were worshiping idols and marrying outside of their people and adopting bad customs, and still God chose these people who would be the ones who would deliver Jesus to the earth, like through the lineage. He still kept them as his people. And so that's how we see God turning the cheek. So it's something that Jesus knows about enemies. Is something that Jesus knows about trials and mistreatment from others that we all need to adopt so that we can approach the situation as he does. Because you see, when Jesus even when Jesus had went back to his hometown, I can't tell y'all which verse to find this in, I can look it up later. But when he went back to his hometown, they was already trying to like kill him before his time. And so they was like coming after him. I think they was like putting him like on the edge of something, like gonna push him off a cliff or something like that. And yeah, they were trying to kill him. And he was like, yeah, it's not that it's not my time. He was not afraid. Like he was not afraid of nothing. Like he just walked right by them like, yeah, it's not the time. And that's exactly how our lives are set up. If it's not for us to happen, we don't got to be afraid of nobody. We don't got to be worried about nobody insults. We got to worry about nothing except for doing what God has us to do. But in Jesus's case, he had a certain time for his appointed death, so he can release his spirit out onto us. And so we give him praise and thanks and honor for that. How does turning the other cheek demonstrate self-love? Turning the other cheek demonstrates self-love by being an actionable example of how you value your created image. You are willing to look beyond the actions and insults of others to remain consistent in who you were created to be, proving that you value yourself and God. It also proves that you trust that God, who is sovereign over all things, considers you and keeps his promises. Turning the other cheek shows that you believe God and trust in his divine plan. So turning the other cheek says that you trust God. Turning the other cheek means that you are letting God do his thing. You are trusting in his plan and you're willing to follow in his will.